This meeting is being recorded. Hi
Hi,
guys,
everybody.
we're the Asian Bad Girls Club. I'm Marianne. I live out here in Brooklyn by way of Mississippi, grew up there, and I'm half Filipino, but we'll just say Filipino because we don't do anything by halves here.
I'm Daisy. I now live in Queens in Astoria, and I grew up on Long Island.
Long
And I Long Island, and I am mostly Thai, according to my 23andMe.
Nice, which is another fun topic that we'll have to talk about at other time.
Mm-hmm.
We figured it was worth another reintroduction because we have some new people that are following us, and thank you so much. And oh my God, but also our backgrounds kind of play into what we'll be talking about today. Daisy, this shit
Mm-hmm.
is bananas, and not in the Gwen Stefani sense, though I have a bone to pick with Gwen Stefani too. We're talking about bananas today and not the fruit. Have
Not
you?
the produce,
Yeah.
not the emoji that we use for a little, little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So, do you want to? You pulled up the definition, right?
I mean,
Why don't you tell the people, the folks?
the folks, according to the very accurate Urban Dictionary, a banana is defined as an Asian American who has lost their heritage. Yellow on the outside, white on the inside. I feel like we have problems with just the term and the connotations overall. But I want to ask you, Daisy, like, have you encountered that term? Like, when was the first time you might have come across it?
Yes, I did. I have encountered it many times. Honestly, probably not until I was a little bit older, probably in my teens. And definitely having grown up in a town I counted before we started this, including myself and my sister, 8 Asian people in our school overall throughout all the ages,
Okay.
including brothers, sisters, everybody, adopted, not adopted, South Asian, Southeast Asian, East Asian, 8 Asians in a school of probably, I don't know, at least 1,200, 1,500, something like that. The first time I encountered that, I kind of felt like, oh, I kind of feel like maybe that's what a lot of people would see me as. Especially since, like, growing up in Long Island, there weren't a lot of Thai people in general, and my family just wasn't super social.
Right.
So most of what I learned and everything that I kind of am closest to my heritage is just through stories of my family, and not necessarily hanging out with big groups of people. And even then, like, growing up around a bunch of mostly Caucasian people, that's just, I wasn't centered. And so, yeah, sorry, I rambled.
And I understand it too because, like, I grew up with, I mean, I had one best friend who's still my best friend to this day, and I'm so excited to see her next week, Diana. She is also half Filipino, and we both grew up in a very, like, white environment. I mean, not exclusively white, like, there were black and brown kids that went to my school, but not a ton. It was kind of like we all banded together and hung out,
Mhm.
rather than it was like all the white kids there. So there weren't a ton of Asian kids that I could have hung out with and could have, considered my barkada. I didn't know what a barkada was until, like, a barkada, like, in Filipino world, is a group of
Mhm.
close knit friends and family friends and stuff like that. So I didn't really even know what that was until, like, my cousins would talk about it. And then Dave, my husband, he comes from, like, he has a very big barkada from back home because his family and they're friends with a lot of other Filipino families in the area. So the barkada was like their friend group. I didn't know what the hell that was until, like, I was exposed to more Filipinos. And in Mississippi, in Greenville, Mississippi, it was me and my best friend Diana against the world. And my mom, she did what she could to keep the culture alive at home. And I feel like we were close to it through food and things like that. But when it came to, like, certain Filipino customs, I didn't know that I was supposed to greet people's parents by, like, taking their hand and putting it on their forehead like this. Like, that's bless, bless.
Mm.
Do that. And I've been called a banana. I mean, it's always like people within our communities, right? Calling
Yes.
bananas.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, when was the first time you were called a banana, and who was it? Because
Oh,
I'm curious.
are we going to offline about it so I can kick their ass? No, but it's always somebody within our own community, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I definitely felt like a banana, but like I have also been called like a Twinkie and a coconut. All these things are interchangeable. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it was maybe in college when I was part of PARE, the Filipino Americans Reaching Everyone. That's what it stood for. And like, I don't know, somebody there called me that, but I didn't really recognize the gravity of the term because I am also half white. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, I get that if you just see me in life, you'll probably think I'm a white girl, but I'm not. I'm like a very proud Filipino. So that happened. And then also like among some of Dave's friends, like I'm not going to call people out by name, but they know what they did. And there was one girl who was like giving me
We
shit.
know.
We
We
know.
know. You know who you are. You know who you are.
No, there was one girl who was like giving me shit. I don't even see this girl that often for her to like be like this with me. But she was
Mm-hmm.
shit one time because, you know, like growing up at home, my parents like taught me how to eat with a fork and a knife and a spoon and all that. Like, I don't have to tell you how I fucking eat, but I guess like in Filipino, like among Filipinos, you use the knife or you use the spoon as a knife, and then you don't really need the knife. And one girl
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Oh, do you use a knife? You don't use the spoon?" I was like, "I mean, I use both, but I never like exclusively use the spoon trick." And she's like, "Well, that's weird." And she's like telling me this. Meanwhile, she's like, I don't know. I don't even know her like that. And she's like fucking calling me a banana and making me feel like I am not part of the group. Meanwhile, there was another girl there who was like not Filipino at all, but she was accepted by the group, no questions asked. And I'm like, okay, love how you're bananaing your fellow Filipina, but you know, you're welcoming to everybody else with no questions asked. Like, I don't understand why, you know, you wouldn't just accept another Filipino.
You know what's so funny? It's almost like that term, like they're, I don't want to know if I want to use this term, but it's like gatekeeping in a way. And like the funny thing is that the first time I really felt like and was basically called a banana was the extremely similar experience was at my university, Students for Asian American Awareness at blah, blah, blah. I guess I'll just say at Bucknell, which was like a 92% Caucasian campus, 8% all else. And having come from Long Island, I was excited actually, and having felt like I didn't really belong to it, at least join a club where it's like, hey, I can finally tap into this community that I never had growing up. Like, I never was able to have a lot of Asian friends, and I kind of always wanted that. Like, I'd always had mostly a bunch of like white friends, but they never really understood me, and so we never got very close. So excited to kind of like be with people who maybe we had like a similar understanding or a similar background. And when I went there, it was the first or second day. I remember them telling me, like, everybody introduced themselves. And I was already like a little bit different because I was also like still like the punk rock Asian girl, which even back then was not common. And I remember them specifically telling me, like, do you speak your language at all? Do you speak it well? It's like, no, but I understand it. Like, I just grew up, I started it, and then once I went to school, kind of lost it because I was just speaking English all the time. And they basically told me I was not Asian enough. And I did not feel comfortable in that club either. And there were a lot of other, like, because it's Students for Asian Awareness, right? There were, of course, lots of like, there were a couple like, Caucasian folks in there, who are super into anime or
Oh my
doing East Asian studies, at that time. And they were, of course, like you said, welcomed, but I just felt so out of place because I just didn't fit the mold in a lot of ways. And also being that I was also one of very few Southeast Asian too. I think there's something potentially to that. Felt a little different, because there are things where, where you're from matters as well. But yeah, I definitely felt like, ooh, that really made me angry. And I'd never felt so shocked in my life. And I really still try to become friends with them until I realized like I just can't twist myself for these people. This is like hanging out with family, like in a way where I have to change myself completely to try to like kowtow to these people to have them accept me, right? Like that's what I, have to do. I have a tendency to do with my family or like with other Asian people's parents and stuff, because I just want that acceptance of like, will you accept me? Because I'm Asian too, like, but it just seems like because I'm so Americanized and so westernized, right, that I'm not accepted into that place and become a banana. But
it's also like, aren't we all a little bit westernized considering that we live like, I don't know. I don't live in the Philippines. I didn't grow up in the Philippines. My mom did the best she could to educate me on like customs and things that were really important to her. And then it was me and Diana trying to figure it out on our own. And it sucks. I mean, I really like fucking feel for you because you're like excited to have these Asian friends for once, and you're excited to like have people who are like you, and then to be turned away and called a banana. That's so hurtful. And it sucks when it's coming from people who are like you and all you want is for them to like accept you and
right.
And then there's also like the flaw in the whole banana coconut Twinkie logic, like assuming you're white on the inside because you fucking listen to like Hanson, or I mean I'm speaking for myself, you're like a cool punk rock girl. So like you're a banana because you like read YM magazine and listen to Hanson and that makes you white? No, you're considering white the default. We just like the pop culture of the place where we are growing up because we're Asian, but we're also American or wherever you're watching and
because even then when you said like, oh whatever, I'm the cool punk, no, in fact cool punk, there's no such thing as cool punk. In Thailand, they don't even know what punk rock is. They only know pop. Okay. So when I go there, I feel like I already know that, I have tattoos. Man, people only think that people who have tattoos are trash or really are like kind of part of like gangs and stuff or like lower class. So like, I just feel so super judged. But for me, it's just an expression of myself. Art, I can't deny the fact that I am second generation. So by proxy, of course, I'm sorry. I was born in Queens. All right. I grew up on Long Island. I have like both. I have my family who taught me how to like really, greet people in my community, cook the food, really have like, I still now, obviously, we're doing Asian Bad Girls Club, right? There's a sense of this like wanting to connect to our heritage and then also still accept the fact that we have this mixed cultural upbringing,
right?
Like we are like Asian American, like I am Asian American. There's always gonna be a part of me that's westernized because I grew up in Deer Park, Long Island. We drank coffee, we went to the mall, so that's just the way it is. Actually, the funny thing about my university was a lot of the New York Asians, we just didn't, that's actually who I ended up connecting with, where people, I ended up working at the coffee shop on campus, of course, like Beatnik, I'm sorry, I'm shit at snapping. And I had a couple of friends, Sunny, Eric, and Benny, and one of them was from Hawaii and two of them from Queens. And they were like, bad boys, like, what you talking about, Ma? Like, ooh, and that's who I ended up I did end up making friends, Asian friends there, but finally it felt like this understanding of this second generation, and they also didn't feel like they belonged to like the alliance group either, because it seemed like there was almost like this thing of like purity of heritage versus just being like, hey, accepting all parts of who you are, maybe.
And just looking at it not like, oh, we decide who is and who isn't Asian. Like, no. Like, you are Asian if you were born with Asian blood. And any hard and fast rules or hard and fast things that make you Asian. Like there was the question I think that came up one time early when we were doing this, like, what's the most Asian thing about you? And I'm like, I think the most Asian thing about me is that I'm an Asian woman who has experienced racism. It's not that I like, put plastic bags under my sink to use for trash bags. That's just being eco-friendly, bitch. But
yeah. Oh, and I've been sexualized just for being an Asian woman.
I'm saying,
like immediately.
things where you're like
Yeah.
into stereotypes that have largely been set by like white people. It's not you like playing into these stereotypes to be Asian. Like you're Asian if you're Asian, period. End of sentence. That's it. No discussion needed. Like, and just because somebody isn't as close to certain customs or things that their parents did growing up, that's certainly nothing to shame them for, because I think, you know, a lot of us are children of immigrants, and our parents, I don't know what it's like to leave my home country and leave everything I knew in hopes that like this next place would be better. And I understand the mentality that it's like we need to assimilate so that our kids will have it better than we do. So like, how are you going to blame somebody for like a defense mechanism that, you know, their parents thought was, not even like putting the blame on their parents, like they grew up the way they grew up, and you know, just accept that and listen to people and don't be a dick and move on. I don't know.
Yeah. I know my family came here for the American dream, and so there was always also like something about putting like the culture on a bit of a pedestal, and so trying to like still have our own heritage, but also take in what we had available to us, right? And then understand, hey, now we're also now we're here, and we're going to consume this media as well. And so we need to understand what's happening around us. We need to understand how other people are thinking, you know, how other people treat us for sure as well. Like my right side neighbor, there was the Vietnam that on the right side neighbor, right, left, whatever, right side was Vietnam vet, left side we had Korean vets, which was like, great, thank you so much fighting for our country. But they just saw us and were just like immediately hated us. And then so we had to, of course, like try everything we could to like try to fit in. Like my mom ended up, you know, like the American flag on the lawn, you know, making sure we were like, you know, like, so we didn't feel so othered. I remember like coming home when we were little and my mom had never heard of Easter or any other things. And we're like, Mom, are we going to get Easter egg baskets? Or like, we're going to do these things. And my mom wanted us to feel like we could also like understand these same things. So they allowed us to have these experiences, you know, not in, obviously we already know a lot of it's commercialized, right? And it, unfortunately, and so my family built into that because it was just like they didn't want us to feel so outside from everybody else.
Yeah,
especially since we didn't have our own Thai community there to like, you know, be a part of.
yeah, and you kind of have to like make your own traditions at this point. You want Easter?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you Easter. I'm gonna buy you peeps, and we're gonna hunt and it's gonna be a my. They were doing the best that they could with the circumstances, and I think they did great seeing how you turned out. So, please,
right.
With like my parents,
and you too, obviously. How you both turned out?
I know. I think we did okay, and I think you know.
Mm-hmm.
Did fine. But you know, my mom too, she tried to teach me, so there's two different dialects that she speaks. Tagalog is one of the main dialects in the Philippines, and then Ilocano, which is like the dialect that her province up north specifically spoke. And apparently when I was a kid, I like knew how to speak here and there, or I knew words, right? Like how much does a little kid know when this is their second language or something? So on top of that, my grandmother's Ukrainian. That's where my long last name comes into play. And she spent a lot of time with us, and she was teaching me words in Ukrainian. I would go to school and I'd just be saying shit, be saying whatever. And apparently like kids didn't know what I was like talking about when like I would say dog or something in Tagalog, but I meant dog in English and whatever. So my mom was like, let's just like stick to English, because like kids are making fun of her because she doesn't know these other words, and I don't want them to make fun of her. So we'll see what it's like to get a grasp on this language. And then I never like learned Tagalog again. I never learned Ilocano. I feel like the default answer that you give people when one of the titas or titas is like, so do you speak? I feel like the default answer is always like, oh no, I don't speak, but I can understand. But I don't know how true that is for me, because like I don't know what I understand at this point because that was so long ago and I feel so far removed from it. And like, it's not on Duolingo yet, so I can't.
And also people have different accents
Mm-hmm.
and different kind of like tonal differences too, which make a difference. And that's something I realized too, because same actually, I grew up obviously first speaking Thai up until I went to kindergarten basically, and then I had to take English as a second language there, with a Greek kid, and then also with somebody who was a special needs student, actually, because back then they didn't even, they didn't know what to do with everybody. They just knew that we were kind of, it took us a little bit more to understand and write down English at that point and speak it, really, truly just speak it. I took that class, and then I just obviously started to speak English so that I could, as the term is, like, assimilate or just, no, adapt.
Right.
I was adapting to my surroundings. Okay, so I adapted to my surroundings, and then there was a point where my family again tried to have us learn how to speak and learn how to write Thai. We went to a school, but it was this mixed, huge school in Queens with like people who were 5 to people who were 18, who maybe even the 5-year-olds had more of an understanding than the 18-year-olds, and I was like 10. I had no clue what was happening. They started off the day with like singing like the Thai anthem, but did not teach it to us. So I was just like mouthing the words, acting like I knew what was happening when I had absolutely no clue. And to this day, all I remember is like parts of the alphabet and how to sound them out, which is Gawkai, which is the first letter of the Thai alphabet, which is Ga, and that's it. Ngangu, which means snake. And nga is a sound, apparently. And now I put that together. At the time, I was like, oh, is this whole thing when I'm trying to say the sound and then what it is, like the word, the whole thing? No, I had no clue what was happening.
It's hard. It's hard. Wait, how do you say snake?
Yeah. Ngu.
No.
Ngu. It's like NG, U with an umlaut. Ngu.
No. Everyone who's ever called Daisy a banana is a no.
Yeah. Love you. Same.
How would you say that you would like flip it on its head if you were ever confronted by that term, or if somebody was being an asshole and just was like, oh, ha ha, Twinkie girl, like, what would your response be to them today, knowing everything Daisy knows now?
Oh,
Loaded, I know.
That is a loaded question. I would probably just say, wow, you clearly have no idea what you're talking about, because I am a cross-cultural human being. I'm a second-generation American, because always first generation to my family who struggled to make it here, even though we were born here. And I'm proud of that. I have this perspective of being multicultural and having lived through so many cultures, where having grown up on Long Island, even there, like, that's multicultural. Why isn't that a thing? I grew up with plenty of Italian Americans, as like a la Jersey Shore, okay, and like, Irish American, Greek American, there's all kinds, and Jewish American, where I know Yiddish words, I know like Italian words, I know, Thai slang as well. Like, this is just what it is. America's meant to be a melting pot, and I just happen to be part of that, like, that sauce.
Exactly. I feel like, I don't know, I guess if I were confronted by the term now, I'd be like, so you are the decider of who is and who isn't Asian, and you're really going to shame somebody because they weren't brought up the exact same way?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Daisy, the reason why you and I are doing this also was to prove that there's no one way to live the Asian American experience. We're all over, and we pick up stuff from all over. We are exposed to environments all over. So if you're going to shame somebody that they weren't raised the way you were, then that's a really closed-minded way to look at it. And also, bananas are rich in potassium, and potassium if you keep going on. Let's go.
Right. We're a tasty nutritional snack. So I mean, that's kind of our experience with the word banana. And if you guys have ever heard the term, if you've ever kind of felt similar ways, I mean, you're there to share your story with us. We're here to listen. We're here to have the discussion. And thanks for, checking us out, listening to what we have to say.
Slide into our DMs with your stories. If you've called somebody a banana, like, no shade, I guess, but please learn from your ways and don't do it again.
Yeah, there's ways we can all grow, right?
You grow and you learn and you grow from your Regina George ways. So with that, I guess thanks for watching and be excellent to each other.